takes more than guts to be a gangster. It takes good ideas. And I hope these ideas help you. Hey, what's going on, guys? This is GangsterKT, and really excited to do my fourth Glock Watch video today. So, as most of you know, this is my tribute to Philosopher. It was my favorite video he always put out. I looked forward to it every month, every 2 months when it'd come out. And just trying to summarize everything in game. And I will say right now, I feel that is just as important as ever. Resources are so tight. There's DD6. There's a lot of things to focus on. And so really just trying to break everything down, kind of summarize it in one place. So really hope you guys enjoy this. It is a little longer video. I'm really going into detail on these topics. So I will put timestamps down in the description below. So, if you just want to see what's my dark promo credit recommendations here, you can skip right to that section. So with that said, let's start looking through Glock Watch number 4. First off, as always, want to cover the mob rules. So that's my overall approach to roster optimization. Won't go into a ton of detail on each of these, but if you're newer, if it's the first time seeing this might help you out. So number 1, do not talk about the mob. Enough said. Number 2, in my mantra for how I prioritize my roster, PvP teams as big as possible, raid teams as big as needed. So if your teams are doing what they need to in the raid, I do not put more in them at that point if I'm not using them elsewhere. Number 3, prioritize the newest characters, draw the line, and don't invest below it. So power creep is so real in this game. You always have to stay looking forward, so keep prioritizing the newest characters. Number 4, identify the power on teams and focus there. Don't just take everyone up equally. So, on a new team of 5 characters, maybe 2 or 3 of them really get value from extra power, and the other ones are more kit-based. So you always want them bigger, you want more health, but really focus on the power on those teams. Rule number 5 is one that's different this time and how I've shifted my strategy. So I have a video I did last video on this, but I'm using a lot of gold right now in the supply store on T18s, and that's because DD6 is fully my number 1 priority. So that is how the mob is approaching the game these days, and as long as you're fully in endgame, I'd recommend that for you too. Number 6, use power cores with events in mind. That's really the main resource we can kind of save for events. But event rewards in this game are currently so important for in-game progress. You can get a lot of T18s there at the last few milestones. And just in general, it's where you get some of the best rewards in the game. So I do try and use my power cores with that in mind. Rule number 6, more than ever, focus on game modes you enjoy and with the best rewards. Raid teams aren't as usable outside of raids. Like, you just need more and more teams right now in this game than we ever had before for all the different modes. So, focus on the one that you enjoy. It could be the one with the best rewards. It could be where you just have the most fun, but focus there. And then rule number 8, the meta changes quickly. So, don't be stubborn. Be willing to pivot. If a new team comes out that makes your old plans null and void, don't stubbornly keep investing in that old character. So that is the mob rules. Let's talk now about who is gaining favor in the mob right now. So these are mobsters on the rise. So number 1, I think the most important team in the game is Secret Defenders, and I'll say specifically Robbie, but they definitely all have their place. They're an arena team. They're amazing in all game modes, and I think the Secret Defenders should really be your top priority right now. Again, outside of DD6, which is kind of the overriding priority, but those arena rewards are so important, and these are the best characters in the other game modes too. So my Doctor Strange is level 10, so he is good. He's valuable if you have the resources, but he just wasn't my priority. I wanted to take the other 4 fully maxed, which I've done to where I can. And then not worrying about Doctor Strange. And I will say on that whole team, I think they're all very important being an arena team to max out. But if I had to pick one, it would be Robbie right now. Black Cat would be a close second, but the damage from Robbie, from those bleeds, from his passive, where he just, kind of has his equivalent AoE ping, it's just unbelievable. So Robbie is definitely the biggest mobster on the rise, although all the Secret Defenders are for sure. Number 2 is Quicksilver. I've been talking about this guy for a while, but I just cannot get enough of him. So if you haven't gotten on board the Quicksilver train yet, choo-choo, it is definitely time to hop on. So he's a top 5 character in the game, and I think, he's just made where his skill set is going to phenomenally plug and play in almost any team you have, replacing maybe the worst 5th character. And I'd say that'll continue to apply in the future with his inability to get speed manipulated and just all the different things he brings. So there's nothing in this game that's truly future-proof. We all learned that with Mr. Sinister. But I think Quicksilver's close, and I think he is as close as they get right now, and he's very stat-dependent, so he's definitely one worth putting a lot of resources into. Number 3 mobster on the rise is Nova. So I'm admittedly pivoting from Nowhere Team right now, and we'll talk about that later. But Nova cannot be overlooked as people start to forget about Nowhere, or, not think they're that good anymore, which is fair in my opinion. But Nova is amazing still. He has amazing sustainability with the charges he has and how that works, and healing himself as he loses charges. He has unbelievable damage, especially from his ult, a very early turn 1 stun. And then he has the battlefield effect, which just gives him more sustainability, more damage to his team when they have deflex. So Nova's going to be meta for a very long time. And as we shift from Nowhere, which is probably appropriate, don't forget about Nova, because he's going to be used in all game modes for months and years to come. And then lastly, gaining favor, I think I'd be remiss to not mention what I'm calling the DD6 power tunes. So it feels like more than ever with this Dark Dimension, there's a few tunes in each mode that can really carry you. And those are also the same tunes that are, for the most part, most valuable in the other game modes. So you really want to get them maxed ASAP, knowing you're going to do it anyways to get as much time as you can out of that tune. And that's the Kang, the Apocalypse, the Vol, the Ravi, the Nova, and the Black Cat. I think those are the main 6, and depending on where you are in DD6 planning, I don't think it's important that you necessarily do them in order, like as far as Global, Cosmic, City. I did Nova as one of my first characters, and sure, that might, keep me from doing another section faster, but it should keep the overall timing just about the same. You don't get great rewards for finishing the incremental sections, some gold, maybe a mega orb, but nothing too fancy. So I think it's really important to do the characters you're going to get that huge value out of elsewhere as you're working your way through DD6. Again, as long as you're going to use them in DD6 eventually, just someone like Nova. So that's some mobsters on the rise right now. I think, Secret Defenders is the huge takeaway there. They're the biggest one and where you really want to focus. So let's talk about the opposite, Pouring Cement. So these are the mobsters that are about to drown, so we aren't going to invest in them. And guys, I'm not saying these tunes are horrible, okay? These are probably good tunes. I don't want to put a list of minions on here saying not to invest in them. But these are ones that I do think have seen their best days, and I'm not planning on, short of something changing, of putting any more gold into them or really any other resources. So the first team I want to talk about is the Bifrost not named Vol. So Vol is one of the best characters in the game. You want to max Vol out ASAP. It's a Scopely original. Vol will always be a factor in this game as long as this game is around. But the rest of the Bifrost, I feel like are kind of a flash in the pan. They're good, don't get me wrong, and they're great in raids. They're great on those Mystic Raid nodes. But as long as you have them big enough where you need them to do the raids, I wouldn't build them any further. I think once the Crucible rule changes, they're really going to lose a lot of value. And even with these rules, I'm not sure how much incremental gains really change that fight. Maybe if you have a little more resistance somewhere, but that's mainly on Vol where you need that. And I guess again, maybe elsewhere, but in general, I just don't think it's worth putting a ton of resources into this team anymore. Knowing their best days are either right now or will be behind them. Number 2, and I'll say I've stood corrected on this team. I think they've been on this list before and proved me wrong. But I think we are finally seeing the end of the Infinity Watch. So the Safeguard Immunity combo is still unbelievably powerful. There's no question and can really make a match difficult. But we're starting to see a lot of counters. And I feel like in Crucible especially, it's getting to the point where if you just throw 5, big new tunes in there, they'll be able to win. It might not be efficient, but Infinity Watch is just getting power crept. You could T18 them to try and stall that from happening a little longer, but I do not think that's a good use of your resources right now. So unfortunately, the Infinity Watch power days are over until something changes down the road and not worth focusing on at all anymore. And then number 3, and this is maybe a bit of a stretch, but the Nowhere team, not named Nova. I do not think they're worth investing in anymore at this point. So they are the best war offense right now. So what is this guy talking about? Again, maybe a stretch, but this team is not the Secret Defenders. They aren't going to be that gangbuster in every game mode. And I think they're really disappointing in Crucible. I can't believe, even though I've got Infinity War Thor up to 6 red stars now, and up pretty high at level 95, and I think T16, close to T17, he's just not doing much in Crucible. I mean, he can do good damage. He can get some defense downs, get an ability block out there, but he's a liability. He's not one that I'm using every Crucible, more just niche here and there if I'm really stretched and need someone. And he's the second best character on the Nowhere team after Nova. So again, I just don't think they're worth building bigger now. I'd say they're doing what I need them to do in War. I do have them fairly big, so it's easy for me to say. But unless you're just really into War, or unless they just aren't winning any War matches for you right now, I do not think it's worth working on Nowhere any further at this point. All right, so next section, let's go through some of the Mafia recruits, some of the newer characters who are out this patch or maybe the last patch, and what my plans are for them. This is where I really get excited with this game and kind of how I'm planning. But the first team is the New Avengers. I know there's a lot of different thoughts on them. I like the New Avengers. I've really been enjoying playing them since all the reworks. I'd say that they aren't my top priority. Again, I think Secret Defenders should be, although mine are maxed already. But if yours aren't, I would have Secret Defenders be your top priority. But I'm taking Ronin to DD6. I'm using Ronin right now, plug and play in Crucible. I have him T17. I'm one piece away from that T17.5, which will be a huge damage increase on him. But he's been great just as a plug and play, like kind of on a walking hate team or similar, using him as the 5th there. With his kit, and his damage has been okay. His bleeds are great, and his damage is okay. Again, I think that 17.5 should take that over the top. But they're definitely one of the top war teams right now, no question, either offense or defense. But with where I am, I have mine at about 1.1 million, and I'm pausing there until the trial comes out. And that's specifically because of how much emphasis I'm putting on DD6. I'd love to build them bigger, but I'm going to wait and see. If they're my bottleneck on the trial, I will put more into them, knowing it'll help in War and maybe other game modes. But that's where I really see the value with them right now, so I am pausing to use those resources elsewhere until I know if it's needed for the trial. Number 2 on the new recruits is the new raid team, the Pegasus team. So it's pretty obvious when it's a new raid team these days, right? We know the formula there. It's going to be amazing in raids, and the question is, how useful will it be elsewhere? So I would say build Pegasus only as big as you need to until we know if those other Toons are going to have a use in the meta elsewhere. And if not, it's not worth building them any bigger. So right now I have bought one offer of each new character, like I've been doing for a little while again. So I do have them, but I've taken them all just to level 75 and I've stopped. So Kestrel, obviously, I have fully maxed. But again, Rescue and then the 2 new Toons, Darkhawk and Iron Man, I have at level 75, T14. I have Blue ISO 4 on them. And, Rescue, I'm taking up to 7 gold stars because the gold stars are a pretty lucrative resource. Like, I have plenty of them right now. So I'm going to see if that does what I need to. If not, I'll definitely build them bigger. You need them to get through their raid nodes. But until we know if they're going to be used elsewhere, I'm not putting any more into them than that, which does allow me to buy more T18 for DD6 planning. Lastly is Zombie Juggernaut, and I'm so excited for Zugs, for Zombie Juggernaut. So I think a lot of people saw Mobile Gamer's video featuring that new 3-piece team, and Zombie Juggernaut was 7 red and 7 yellow, and there's no way we'll even be able to get him there, no matter how much money you spend initially. They'll probably cap him at 4 red stars, maybe 5, but I would guess 4. But it still showed what his capability is. And I think, Zombie Iron Man's kit is so unbelievable, but being a 2-piece team, there was a lot of use for it. Don't get me wrong, we're still using them, but this is just going to make Zombie Iron Man even that much better now. And Zombie Juggernaut looks amazing. So just so excited for him to come out. I think this 3-piece team is going to be a beast, and I'm going to max out Zombie Juggernaut as quickly as I can. So lastly, I want to talk about building the arsenal, and this is mainly Red Star promo advice, although I do have Blue ISO 5 here as well. So this has changed so much since the last Glock watch. I hardly even recognized what I was talking about, and that's because of those gold promo offers. So if you haven't purchased those, then this probably is tighter still, albeit not as bad as it used to be, and this advice maybe is not the same. But I did buy 2 of those initially, and right now I'm sitting on 2,500 gold promos and just looking for excuses to spend them. We're still getting in so many more on top of that when we were. So basically the strategy I have, if I'm using a character in Crucible at all, outside of like an Absorbing Man or a tank, someone like that, I'm going to take them to 7 red stars. If they're a critical damager in war, maybe someone like a Spider-Woman or even a... not Miss Marvel, but Nico, excuse me. I'm going to take them to 7 red stars too. So just almost, again, looking for excuses to use them. Not going to burn them all, but I'm getting a lot of my new characters at 6 or 7 anyway. So it's just a completely different economy now. But the top gangsters I would recommend for gold promos in order. I think one worth talking about is Robbie is actually my number 1. And that's a nod to how important Arena is. How important Robbie is on that team and how much value Robbie gets from additional stats. So he is really going to use those stats. I'd say, overall he's maybe not as good as Kang, but again, you're using Robbie in Arena right now and you're not using Kang in Arena. So I do think Robbie gets the nod for number 1. Number 2 is Kang. Number 3 is Kestrel with her rework and how valuable she is, especially now with the Pegasus raid team. Number 4 is Vol, just highest damager in the game, huge in DD6, well worth any power-ups. Number 5 is Ronin. I think that's the right call, especially if you're into the next trial. Number 6 is Spider-Weaver. Number 7 is Fury. And then coming in at number 8 is Rescue. So again, my approach is doing almost anyone I can, but if you are still a little tight, that's the order I'd be going in right now. Top characters for Dark Promotion credits. So there's been a lot of good videos about this. I touched on this in my last video too, but I have this in order and actually by like the star amount that I would do. So right now, I would do Apocalypse as my first priority, taking him to 5 stars. It's 3,500 dark promo credits, which I hated to see. That's a lot for a 5-star, but Apocalypse warrants it, right? He's the best character in the game besides Skrull. So we want to make him as big as we can. My next priority after that is going to be Zombie Juggernaut. So he's not out yet, but I expect to have to buy his 1 red star, his 2 red star, his 3 red star, and I don't know how high that'll go, but those are what I want to be my next priority. Additionally, the earlier red stars are actually like more value for that character than what the later ones are. Going from like 20 to 35% is a bigger overall percentage gain than going from 60 to 75%, even though they're both a 15% increase. So it's not like a huge difference, but getting him to that 4th red star I think is going to be really valuable, or however high they'll let us take him. Maybe that's 5. After that, this is going to be controversial, but I would do Quicksilver to 7. And that's probably only going to be, something I'd recommend maybe for a few more months. And there's a point he's just not going to be worth doing that anymore. But how dependent he is on his stats and just how incredibly good he is in this game. I think after APOC to 5 and after Jugs, he's the next one I would do. After that, I would do Apocalypse to 6, which is the same cost as Quicksilver to 7. But you don't get quite as much benefit from a 6 as you do from a 7. And then I would do Black Cat to 6, and then I would do Nova to 6. So I know a lot of people are much bigger on Black Cat, and I think, being the most recent legendary, being an arena character, there's a lot of good arguments for that. But for me, it really just comes down to Black Cat's alt being single target. And I'd almost put Nova over Black Cat for that instead, but that's where I just couldn't because of Arena. But so much of Black Cat's value is from the kit, the death proofs, the stun. Those things aren't really affected by the red stars. So she has a lot of things that are. She has amazing damage. She has the bleeds. She does have an AoE special, even though it's not, all characters. It's the chain. So she's great, and red stars will help her. But I'm just not as high as her as some others are because of those reasons. So lastly, top Toons to Blue ISO 5, and I'd say this is post Big Boy. If you're still working on your Big Boy Apocalypse, that is your priority, no question. But if you have him, I would do Apocalypse first, then Robbie for a lot of the reasons I said for the gold promos, and again, it's just all about damage for this. then Kang, then Quicksilver, then Vol, then Nova, then Black Cat, and then Weaver. So I do think one thing in general with the Blue ISO 5, it's still very rare. That's starting to change. We're getting more, but we do have to be deliberate with where we spend it. And so even characters that you're using in every game mode, like for me, I know I was torn on Miss Marvel for a little bit. On the Secret Defenders, the Miss Marvel Big Time, or Big Light, excuse me. But at the end of the day, if I wanted a little extra health or armor on her, I could buy that ISO piece, but doing the ISO 5 upgrade itself just really gave damage. With her being a skirmisher, it makes it so she turns a heal into a bleed, I think, which, sure, it's not negligible, but, that's not going to change any match you're using her in. Hers is about her survivability, not about her damage at all. So I actually do not think she's a good one to Blue 5, even though you're using her every day and all over the place, and she's an amazing character. But I would really focus it on these ones that I listed here, and that's because it's about the damage, Someone like Spider Weaver, I'm still really dependent on Crucible matches on being able to kill a certain Toon by the end of her third attack once Doom Pops, or or just things like that. So that's really where I focus on the Blue 5 upgrades and what I would recommend for you. Alright guys, so I hope you enjoyed that video today. Again, this is my 4th Glock watch and just trying to throw all the knowledge, all the advice I have at this point in the game into one video. So as always, I give you my word that this is the best advice I have. All I have in this world is my balls and my word, and I don't break them for no one. Peace!